And hello there, all you Stay Tuners. Welcome back to another episode of Stay Tuned Sports. Not sure what episode this is because we're a week away from our 1 year anniversary being on the Podbean network. So it's pretty exciting that we've 99% of the time kept it consistent. Had an episode every week. Now we're up to 2 episodes a week with Shoulders coming on Thursdays and Fridays or Fridays. Me doing this little fight show type episodes, which is pretty cool. I've kind of taken it on a little bit more serious, and especially with the live tweeting with the UFC fight nights or the bare knuckle boxing, which we're a little bit about a month and a half away. Can't wait for that. I just saw on Twitter that they will be announcing the rest of the fight card soon. Speaking of Twitter, head over there. You can find me, my personal one, at Jimbo ST Sports. You can find the show at ST Sports Podcast. Head over to Shoulders, follow him. He is Shoulders_bro. May change it, may not. Never know. He's like a girl sometimes. But kind of a slow... and also head over to our YouTube channel there too. We have... most of our past episodes are on there too. I believe there's only like maybe 5 or 6 that I couldn't upload to the channel, so unfortunately you won't be able to get those on YouTube just yet. I'm still looking to try to figure that out. But like I started to say, though, it was a little bit of a slow fight week this past week as far as news goes. The one thing I was surprised about was not necessarily that Brock Lesnar retired, but just everybody was kind of like, okay. You know, like I thought maybe there might have been a little bit more of hoopla, or whatever you want to call it, about him retiring. And UFC, and now I think it was a couple weeks ago, you know, I came on and I said that they were talking about doing a Brock Lesnar, Daniel Cormier fight for August. And sounded like they were working pretty close to it. Brock Lesnar lost the belt in WWF, so kind of set it up a little bit that maybe he could step away from WWE for a couple months to, you know, take this fight. When Cormier defeated Miocic back in July, Lesnar was there, came in, you know, pushed Cormier a little bit. They were a little pushing, shoving, you know, trying to sell the fight. And then this past Tuesday, Brock Lesnar called Dana White and said, "No, I'm done. I'm retired." But I did see a story yesterday. Now I don't know how accurate it is because it's coming from Dave Meltzer, our good buddy King, who's a wrestling fan. I meant to text him and see what his feelings were about this, but supposedly UFC redid their pay-per-view point system, I guess, if you want to call it that, where the fighters of the main event, co-main event would get pay-per-view points, which would decipher how much of the pay-per-view's cut you would get. Now, supposedly UFC has redid that pay-per-view point system where if Brock Lesnar would have took this fight, he actually would have lost a lot more money than what he normally would bring in for UFC. UFC would obviously make buku dollars off of a Brock Lesnar main event pay-per-view fight. So to try to offset the loss there, Brock Lesnar and his agent asked for a flat rate, which UFC deemed way too high. And I'm curious how much it was, but nothing came out yet. And that's why, most likely why Brock called Dana White up and said, you know, I'm retired. Which I'm kind of glad. I liked Brock Lesnar when he came in. You know, maybe it was because the whole wrestling feeling around him, you know, liking him in WWE and stuff like that. But if he would have came back to fight Cormier, he's 41 now. He still has to serve at least a few more months of his suspension for getting popped for steroids. Hasn't fought, what, since 2016, I think it was, when he fought Mark Hunt, which caused the steroid test to be positive. You know, so he's going to be rusty. He could be training, you know, every day all he wants, but getting in that ring is totally different than training every day. And to get in there with a fighter like Cormier, with the wrestling he has, which it would be a good wrestling match between him and Lesnar if it got down to the ground. But this guy just knocked out Miocic, which is one of the better strikers in the heavyweight division. I think it would have just been a very bad ending to Lesnar. Not saying he was a Hall of Famer, which he probably will because he's a big name. He brought a lot of pay-per-view buys to UFC, brought a lot of wrestling fans to the UFC who probably stuck around, who didn't watch UFC before Lesnar came. But as far as record, I think he's like 5-3, you know, something like that. Granted, he did defend the heavyweight belt twice before losing it to Cain Velasquez. But that's the thing with that heavyweight division, though. No one really holds on to it very long. And, like, for example, like Miocic, I think he defended it 2 or 3 times before he lost it to Cormier. Before that, Junior Dos Santos, Cain Velasquez. Like, no one really went on I don't even want to say a John Jones defense streak, but no one actually. I don't even think I can remember the last time a heavyweight champ went more than 3 defenses before losing it. So I'm kind of glad that this fight isn't going to happen. But with that being said, Dana White did say they are moving closer to a Cormier-Miocic rematch. I think Miocic deserves it. I know a lot of fans out there don't believe so because, one, Cormier knocked him out, and a lot of people don't like automatic rematches, which I'm one of them. But like I just said, he defended it twice. It wasn't like he won it and then just lost it to Cormier. It wasn't like he got mauled in that fight between Cormier. It's just that Cormier set up that punch nicely and got it through, knocked him out, and in the first round, and won the belt. Now, going into this next, and I think yesterday I saw that they may have actually verbally agreed to the match too, because I know Miocic's been clamoring for a rematch since the loss. Now, this time around, I'm curious to see what the outcome is going to be. Will it be, Cormier losing it, or is Miocic going to get knocked out again? Because, like I said, even though it was a first-round knockout, it was setting up to be a good fight. It's not like a Derek Lewis, that one fight that he was in, they only landed like 5 punches the whole fight. So I'm curious to see if they have like another outcome, or will it go to distance this time around? Now, last weekend we also had some UFC fights, which pretty much seems like it's every week a fight is on there on ESPN Plus, which. Oh, kind of like circling back to the Lesnar thing. That was the reason why that the numbers were offset, because ESPN Plus is the sole provider, of all UFC pay-per-views where before ESPN Plus, you could get on Roku, you could get on, DirecTV, and not just get singled out, basically. So that's why the pay-per-view buys would be low for Lesnar, because not many fans are subscribing to ESPN Plus just for UFC. So, like I started to say, last weekend there was UFC fights. It was Renato Sueza versus Jack Hermanson. Once again, I kind of forget who I took. Some of these guys I remember who I took. Two of the fights I picked to be fight of the nights, and the one actually turned out to be a pretty damn good fight, and that was the Mike Perry and Alex Oliveira. That was a very entertaining fight. Mike Perry won. I don't like him. He rubs me the wrong way, but I'll give him credit. It was a good fight. It was a hell of a fight. Cowboy, he hung in there, and he lost by unanimous decision. At one point, they didn't show it on TV, but he actually dislocated his one toe. Round got over, and they popped it back in place. I mean, these guys are tough. I mean, I stubbed my toe. I fall down like Peter Griffin and roll up on a ball. But the fight started off with Roosevelt Roberts against Thomas Gifford. I think I actually tuned in late because I believe I came in as this fight was getting over. So I didn't get to see this fight, but Roberts defeated Gifford by decision. From the way the commentators were talking, it sounded like it was a one-sided fight. Pretty much all the judges scored it 30-27, all three judges. Then after that was my first potential fight of the night, Corey Sandhagen versus John Lineker. Now I remember I took John Lineker because I've seen him a few times, and he's just an animal. This one I was surprised. It went to a split decision. The first two rounds, Sandhagen just was destroying Lineker, and all Lineker seemed like he was trying to do was set up that overhand left. He would do a jab and then just throw it, like not really try to set it up good enough. And when the third round started, you could see a different Lineker. He was pushing. He just knew he needed a knockout to win this fight. He's pushing. He was doing shots to the body. He was doing different things to set up that left hand, and it caught a couple times. And I'll tell you what, this Corey kid, he gained a lot of respect from me because he has a chin. I mean, there was 2 or 3 solid hard overhand lefts that Lineker threw and connected. But in the end, Lineker didn't do enough. It was a split decision. 2 of the judges scored at 29-28, where one scored at 28-29. I'm just wondering now, Lineker has been around for a while. I'm not saying he should retire, but maybe is father time finally catching up to him, where all these young bucks are quicker, know how to defend, maybe watches film a little bit better than the guys back in the day did for that would face Lineker. So his Lineker's next fight will be an interesting tell to see where he's at in his career, I think. But hats off to both. It was still a good fight. It wasn't like a total blowout. Sandhagen definitely, I thought he should have got the unanimous decision, but split decision I could see. Corey Sandhagen defeats John Lineker. After that, it was a light heavyweight bout with Glover Teixeira defeats Ion Cutelaba by submission. I remember, I think I went against Glover because he just hasn't been that great as of late. Like I just said about Lineker, about the Father of Time. Looked like Father of Time came up to Teixeira a few fights ago. But he ended up pulling out the win in the second round. I believe he caught Ion and knocked him down, wrestled him a little bit, finally, slipped the forearm underneath the chin and got the choke. And I believe it was Teixeira. Once the fight got over, they did a post-fight interview, and Ion wasn't the original opponent for Teixeira, and Teixeira actually asked for the guy that got hurt or whatever that had drop out, that they, could they run that match. So we'll see how that turns out for him. He still thinks he could win a title, which I don't know if he has enough time. He's definitely older. I think he's 2 or 3 wins away from maybe even being considered a top contender, a number 1 contender. I like the guy. He's very respectful towards the sport. He's respectful towards the fighters. But it's just one of those timing things. I think that door for him closed. But time will tell. We'll see what will happen with him. And then after that fight, like I said, was Mike Perry against Alex Cowboy Oliveira. Very entertaining fight. Mike Perry definitely had every answer for anything that Cowboy did to him. Whether it was jabs on the ground, there was a couple times that he snuck out when Cowboy got close to a submission or whatnot. Went all 3 rounds. It was a unanimous decision. All 29-28. And after that, unfortunately, I was pissed off about this. Greg Hardy defeated Dmitry Smolvyov in the first round. As all of us pretty much know, Greg Hardy played in the NFL, had a lot of issues off the field with domestic disputes. Believe he's still technically suspended because of it. And he was in the co-main event, defeated Dimitri with some punches, but it wasn't even a good fight. Like, you got this Greg Hardy as a co-main event guy going up against a guy that looked like the way he fought should have been on the prelims. And Dana White, it keeps propping this, Greg Hardy up and trying to build him up to not necessarily be the next Conor McGregor or whatnot, but just to show you how retarded this guy is. Greg Hardy, after the fight or the next day in an interview, he said he's the Michael Jordan of MMA. You haven't fought anybody yet. What, like, you won 2 fights on Dana White's Contender. You got disqualified for illegal elbows on a prelim card, or was the first fight on the main card. And then you go up against this guy that looks like was just selling hot dogs on the side of the road. So of course you're going to run through this guy. And I'm not putting Dimitri down because, again, he could probably kick my ass. But if you're a co-main event, you should have a big name or a B-list fighter going up against Greg Hardy. And I'm glad Derek Lewis actually called Greg Hardy out. I would love to see that fight. The one thing I will give Greg Hardy credit for is he does have speed, like his agility. So that may cancel out Derek Lewis's power. But I would have rather seen, now I know I just said I'm glad the Brock Lesnar Daniel Cormier fight is not going to happen. I'd rather see Lesnar fight Greg Hardy both guys are very agile. I think Brock has more power in his hands. And the one thing Greg Hardy has yet to face is a very good wrestler. This Dimitri supposedly was a good wrestler. I think I saw him try to take him down once, and it was weak. But if you put like a Brock Lesnar, or I would even like to see Curtis Blades go up against Greg Hardy. Let's see how good Greg Hardy is. Yes, he has power. He knocks out people, but these guys are kind of like the what was it, the Bronx Brawler from the 1980s, 1990s WWF. They're all jobbers. They're all lower class type guys. Throw some big names out there. See how Greg Hardy does with the lights. Doesn't get disqualified for illegal elbows. Maybe I'm just biased because I don't like the guy with everything he has done in his past. But that's my feelings about that. Then came the main event. Jack Hermanson versus Ronaldo Sueza. Pretty sure I went with Jack because every time Sueza gets close enough to a title match, he unfortunately chokes and has to go back on a 2-3 fight win streak just to get back to title contention. And sure enough, Hermanson wins by decision, unanimous. And that's the thing too, is Hermanson took this fight on just a couple weeks' notice. So maybe that played into the win a little bit because Sueza was planning for someone else. But Sueza just looked out like flat-footed, didn't know what to do. Hermanson, I'm definitely starting to like him. I may start following him. He's starting to be a new fighter of mine. He shows a lot of grit, a lot of heart. Definitely has some strength behind his punches. And it was still a good fight. Went 5 rounds. By the 5th round, both fighters were pretty tired. But compared to the past couple UFC fight nights, this one, grade-wise, I would probably give it a B-. I mean, it was good. The Mike Perry Cowboy fight was the best one out of all of them, I believe. Teixeira surprised me, like I said. The Hermanson Sueza fight I thought could have been better, but it was still okay. Greg Hardy, whatever, screw him. And so this coming weekend we have one of my favorite fighters going up against one of my favorite fighters that I follow on Twitter with the show, which again you can follow at ST Sports Podcast. It's UFC Fight Night, La Quinta versus Cowboy, Donald Cerrone. And looking at the card, it actually don't look that bad. Like I said, you have La Quinta versus Cowboy. You got Derek Brunson versus Elias Theodoro. Cub Swanson's on it. Walt Harris is on. So there's 3 or 4 out of the 6 fights that could be pretty good fights. So to get my fight picks for this coming fight night that you can find on ESPN Plus, only there because they're greedy assholes, and I wish I had a little bit of that money. But to start off the main card, we have the middleweight fight, Marc-Andre Barlout versus Andrew Sanchez. I like Andrew Sanchez in this fight. I think he's a little bit quicker. I think if he gets down to the ground, he may be able to land some hard, serious punches. Maybe get a ref stoppage there with punches. So I'm going to go with Sanchez for the opening fight. Then after that, we have a heavyweight fight between Walt Harris versus Sergey Spivak. I'm going to go with Sergey. Just because just that name alone makes me hurt a little bit. I could probably feel his punches from here. But with this heavyweight fight, I'm curious to see how this one works out. I think it was Joe Rogan a couple pay-per-views, fight nights ago, made the comment that you're only 1 or maybe 2 knockouts away from a title contention. So I think Sergey will make that step closer by dropping Walt Harris and getting the KO and win this fight. Next fight after that is a bantamweight, and I love the bantamweight division. Those little guys are just so quick and just non-stop pace. We have Brad Katona versus, man, I'm really going to butcher this guy's name. I'm sorry, but Merab Valishvili. I'm going to go with Brad Katona just because I'll be honest, I haven't heard either of those names. I'm just starting to get back into UFC, watching the fights and everything. But like I said, I love this fight. The division, it's very fast, entertaining. I hope Dana White keeps both the bantamweight and featherweight division around and not get rid of it and, think there's maybe too many belts out there, because I just don't think there is. It's not like boxing. After that bantamweight bout, we have a featherweight bout between Cub Swanson and Shane Burgos. Cub Swanson's another one I like. He always struck me like a Michael Bisping. I know they come from kind of from the same fight camp. Cub's got some serious hands. His chin used to be good. Not too sure lately. It might be one of those, the old saying, once you get knocked out once, it's a lot easier to get knocked out again. So I won't be surprised if Shane catches him, but I think Cub pulls out the win here and maybe takes another step closer to possibly getting considered in the title contender race there. Then after that, we have a middleweight fight between Derek Brunson and Elias Theodoro. Again, Derek Brunson. I'm going to go with him. I haven't seen him fight in a while, again, because I kind of stepped away from UFC for a little bit there. But I've always liked him, except for the Conor fight. Conor called that one out and just destroyed him. But since then, it just seems like, he wins. So hopefully he pulls off this win. And we'll see what kind of fight comes after that if he does pull out a win. Then the main event, Al La Quinta versus Donald Cerrone. This could be a good fight. I really haven't seen any trash talk between the two, but they're both very good sellers for a fight, if you want to call it that. I'm going to go with Donald Cerrone. I've always liked him. His leg kicks are just freaking nasty. I like the story how he always travels to the fights in a Winnebago. He just seems like a guy that you see at your local bar. You can sit down and have a 3-hour conversation with. Al La Quinta, he strikes me as nose up in the air type, suits type guy, And I have no problem with him. Like I said, I like him. I just think Donald pulls out this win here. Because I think actually Donald may have lost his last fight. And it's kind of funny how this fight came about. If you guys remember, probably about a month ago, I was talking about it. They were trying to set up the Donald fight with Conor McGregor for July. And I believe the International Fight Week out in Vegas. And Conor supposedly kept ducking him. So Donald finally said, I'm done. I moved on from that fight. He doesn't want to fight Conor at all. Al La Quinta stepped up, said, I'll fight you. And a couple weeks later, the fight got signed, and here we are. So there's my picks for this week. That's it. That's going to probably be it for this week. Because like I said, it was a little bit of a slow fight week. Nothing really big. I'm hoping this next week we get some announcements for Bare Knuckle as far as fights go. I'm hopefully also going to be live tweeting the UFC fights on Saturday. I think it's over in the US this week, so it'll be a late night one. So if you guys are on and you want to follow me or interact with my picks, head over to ST Sports Podcast. That's where I'll be live tweeting. Also, if you follow my personal one, Jimbo ST Sports, when I write my articles for BellyUpSports.com, they go there first, and then I'll retweet it, and I'll retweet it with the show. Also, head over to Shoulders, who will be back tomorrow with us. We have a lot to talk about, the draft and the Tyreek Hill thing going on, among other things. Follow him at Shoulders_bro. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, TuneIn. Just in case one doesn't work, you can always go over to one of those other ones to download us. Head over to YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. I think that's all the advertisements I got. This is your good friend Jimbo, signing out.